Welcome to My Period Stories. This is a video podcast series where we talk about menstrual hygiene, menstrual health, and anything pertaining to menstruation across the world. Here we bring you men and women with fascinating period stories to tell. And let me tell you, there are amazing stories to hear. So if you're ready, take a seat. Welcome to the podcast. Today, we're flipping the coin a bit and we're looking at what would the world look like if men menstruated. Yeah, I know it's cheeky, but sometimes it's good to flip the coin, check out another scenario and see whether we'll better handle the issue of periods if we're all looking at it from different lenses and we're coming together to a place where we can move forward. Today, we're looking at what if men menstruated. For us women, we deal with pains, we deal with hormonal changes. Our hormones go riot once that time of the month is here. We're looking at alternatives to menstrual pads. You're looking at tampons, menstrual cups. Some are dealing with rags and socks and, depending on your status, your economic status and where you live. Women deal with a lot. There are menstrual health conditions, and then the fact that when you're menstruating, you probably won't be able to do the kind of sports that you want. What if you're an athlete? How do you even cope with it? Men don't know all of this. So on the podcast today, we're checking out the men. We have a guest here who'll be talking with us and, checking out the scenario with us. What if men menstruated? So with me to talk about this particular topic is an ex-banker, training business and development professional, my friend, Kuro John Ngubor. So, Kuro, welcome to My Period Stories.
Thank you.
First of all, how does it feel to be on the set of a podcast that talks about periods?
I wish I could say, let this cup pass over me, but I knew you'd never agree, so...
No, but I brought the cup to you. It's not passing over at all.
I'm here.
Right. Thank you for accepting to be here.
You're welcome.
I know a lot of men just run away from talking about periods, but then women also don't like to talk about periods publicly. Sure. So this is about normalizing the period conversation. That's what My Period Stories is about. Sure. So what if men menstruated? Off the top of your head, what do you have to say before I start my questioning?
The world would be a different place.
Thank you. How?
So I'd first paint pictures in my head of some of the most... entertainment is the biggest thing today. So let's pick entertainment. Let's pick the biggest part of entertainment, sports and music and movies. The rest, you can cut, you can rewind, you can replay. I imagine somebody on the field having an incident when he's about to score a goal. I picture someone swimming and then the color of the pool changes. I picture scenarios like that. I ask questions around, well, of course, when we talk menstruation, we shouldn't just isolate it. Menstruation should mean, an egg is being released, there's fallopian tube, there's womb. Please, everybody listening, don't think about everything else. Just stick to that part, that menstruation part.
Don't worry, on their behalf, we will try.
Fantastic. So if that was the case, I'm sure we would have to do many different things to accommodate scenarios like that. I imagine a C-suite executive standing up from a seat and having to sit back down because everybody has to leave the room first. So I painted those pictures in my head as a man, and it's pretty awkward.
Right, but because that's the reality of many women. It doesn't matter whether you're young or old, as long as you're menstruating, you could just be embarrassed at any time.
Very true.
Right. So having painted those scenarios, one of the common scenarios or, realities of women, especially women professionals, is that once you're cranky as a boss, your staff, especially the male staff, are thinking, she has come again. Maybe she's menstruating. Her period don't come. That sort of thing. What about men? Do men not get cranky male superiors at work, in the workplace. So what do you think of that? What if men menstruated? Would we be talking about that?
First is, what do we think about when men, for instance, get cranky, according to us? By the way, cranky is not something I just pull off like something out of a hat. Sometimes somebody is dealing with something and complaining about something. I would say the person is cranky. I'm told to do a job, I don't do the job. I'm speaking in the workplace now. And then someone is complaining about it, I think the person is cranky. Because we usually judge other people by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions. So if only we could look at the issue, isolate it, it may not be cranky, even with women. But if men were to be looked at from that same perspective, that, oh, maybe he's having, his period, as people are wont to say with women, we again think things will change, things will be different. Now, the thing with most men is we can be cranky about one thing at one time, and the perception is that with women it could be 6 things at a time. And I don't even know how men will handle the hormonal imbalances. We just have one thought, and suicide rate is higher, we have more depression, we are dying younger, we're having more lifestyle diseases. So try and imagine hormones thrown into that space.
Yeah, but this list of things happening now is not peculiar to men. Women also go through that.
Oh, yes.
The thinking in some quarters is that if men menstruated, there'd be better policies around issues regarding menstruation. For instance, access to menstrual pads, removal of tax from menstrual products, the fact that you'll be able to discuss, freely. Men never do coded things, in this wise. Men, you'll probably be having a beer or a drink, and you'll be talking about it freely. Nobody will be thinking about pills for this and pills for that. It will just be in your face. Is it that when we say that, are we saying that men look after themselves, after each other much more than women?
Well, that would be assuming that the world is entirely ruled by
It's
men.
a man's world, isn't it?
I'm trying not to stick to cliches.
Ah.
So let's assume that that is the case. I think certain things will change. And I won't even take it, to the end of to the other extreme yet. Let's start from the basics. Like, how do you dispose of tampons and sanitary towels? Are there provisions for that today? What kind of vibes do we give off if someone around us today, a female, suddenly had a period and had an incident? Those things would change if men were involved in the mix as well. Definitely, whether it's a man's world or not, because a number of the things that keep the world going, that bring money to the table, have men in the mix. In fact, some things have been, we even say sometimes it's something men do, and then we have to carve out a space for women, or this is something that is a man's thing. If a woman becomes a CEO, she's breaking the glass ceiling. Who put the ceiling there first?
You men.
Well, again, who am I?
You men.
By the way, who am I speaking for? Men or women or all of us?
That's yours to make up your mind on this podcast.
Okay.
Because truly, women deal with even water. Even the space
the
to change,
things.
that privacy to change at that time of. I mean, look at the schoolgirls. They're having their periods. They have to go to school. They get to school and there's no water, and then there is just not water. They do not even have toilets.
Even toilets.
Or changing spaces.
True.
So the thing is, we've been talking about this for a long time, and it doesn't look like it's going to change. Is it because men don't menstruate?
I think things get given attention or prominence when people talk about it enough, which is why I think what you're doing is fantastic. I'll give you simple examples. In many parts of the world, buildings are now being built to accommodate people who are physically challenged deliberately. Like, could there be railings that have no stairs? Can the lift accommodate a wheelchair? People have cars today. One of the simplest examples I give to disadvantage, which is what menstruation does to women, and I'm being as honest here, I hope the men don't beat me up when I leave, is this. Simple things like someone who's left-handed could feel left out. When you go for dinner and you are putting your cutlery in the right hand, you look awkward to other people when you put it in your stronger hand, when you put your knife in your stronger hand. people who are left-handed drive in right-hand drive countries.
Southpaws.
Exactly.
Right.
You drive in right-hand drive countries, and the gear is on your right, but you are left-handed. So you see, there are quite a number of issues that essentially what has happened is the world has been built around the construct of somebody who's like this, who's largely right-handed, thinks this way, does this, can read signs, and then every amendment that has come from people talking about it and then getting attention, and then things begin to change. And I think that's really the way to go.
So in what way can we pull you men into this issue of menstruation and the number of
Realities
issues
of it,
that,
true.
that women and girls are dealing with? Because the truth is, we need tax to be removed from, menstrual products. I remember that the present the president of Nigeria. There was a time there was this act, and they talked about removal of tax on menstrual products, but it's not being implemented. So enforcement is the key now. How do we get to that point? How do we even begin to press for that? It's been done, but it's not being enforced. That's number one. Two, how do we get corporate bodies, men like you, our daddies, our uncles, our nephews, which one again? Our boyfriends, to begin to look at this period issue more critically and more empathetically, that look, we need to do something. Like when organizations come and say, look, there is no toilet in this school. How do we get you men to support us and say, okay, because of the women especially, they need to do this, they need to do that. Let's go support and build a toilet and things like that. How do we pull you in? Because it looks like we women have been talking to just ourselves.
I would say a great start would be to tell a compelling story, or a series of compelling stories around it. Men have women around them. I have 4 sisters. Men have wives, kids. I have a beautiful daughter. I have 4 sisters. I have colleagues I've worked with, colleagues I'm working with. So men know that we need women. It's not that we want to have them, but we need women around us. It's not in the faces of the world, of people that can make policy and implement things like that yet, because there's not enough of a compelling story towards it. You have to dig to find things around it. So I'm not going to say, oh, let's stage manage something, like someone has a huge mishap happens and then we now say, oh, because of that, but there's a compelling enough story and it's passed properly. I think there will be attention in that wise. I like that the Senate in Nigeria has talked about it. I know that Nigeria's part of our issues are that we don't implement as much as we have on paper. And that's a general thing. So if you ask that general question, how do we get people to implement? Usually it happens when somebody who can has an experience or hears a story. It's one of those two. We think out people's emotions a bit. They have an experience of their own, or they hear a compelling story. I think working around those two will get people, especially since it's been discussed already. Tax is just one, but it's huge. But if you notice, we've already talked about things outside of having tampons or menstrual pads. Where do you clean up? Where do you dispose of those items? How do people react to it? I'll pick HIV/AIDS as an example. At some point, there was a huge stigma about it. There still is, though many other diseases have come and, Ebola, and all of that, COVID. But the perception has changed a bit. Antiretroviral drugs can help to stem this. And then there's more attention going there. So I think between a compelling story and experience from people around them, there'll be more. If you want to get this story out, in my own opinion, let women talk more.
Let women talk more, but I know that women haven't been quiet, except that, oh, you disagree?
No, I agree that women have not been quiet, which is why I, shook my head.
Yes, and we have men as caregivers at home. You've talked about the women in your life. It means that you know the stories about their periods. You know whether this particular woman is having pain or is not having pain. And so you are around and with us in all that we experience with periods. So why is it not coming from men that, look, I have a boyfriend or I have a girlfriend or I have a wife who's going through this, and really we should do something about it. Why is it not coming from you? Why must we tell a compelling stories when you live with compelling stories?
Okay, so for my wife, for instance, she also has, she menstruates naturally, including the women I mentioned. What would naturally happen without a force would be to handle it in your own space, which most people will probably do. Make sanitary pads or tampons available for my own daughter or my own wife, or let them have access to it. If I was not, if my economic state at that time could not help me do that, because it would be interesting to ask, what does the man who lives in certain parts of Lagos and they can barely feed, what do they do? What do the people who beg on the streets do when they have, such an incident? It would be nice to have those kind of stories. Now, the truth is, the men will simply just sort out. I'm not speaking for every man, but most likely sort out what is in their immediate space until there's a loud voice outside the window, and then collective action happens. Women are speaking, trust me, but I'd say for the most part, it's dealing with me and my people rather than it's a general issue.
So we need, if I hear you correctly, we need to do an us, we thing.
Yes.
We need to gain traction.
True.
Touchable, visible traction in this matter. Okay, I know also that just as you've said, people deal with their spaces, but we're getting to a point where we need to look at other spaces. We hear that 20 million children in Nigeria are out of school. Out of this, 10 million are girls, and they're out of school. One of the reasons why they're out of school is because they do not have the right materials to maintain their menstrual hygiene during their periods. And it's important because once they don't have, they're subject to ridicule and embarrassment in school. They can't go to school because they're getting stained and all of that. They stay at home. Okay. If it happens the first month, the second month, you become the one who is known for this. So there's a perpetual shaming for that, and then you just lose the interest in going to school. Why should I go there? It's going to be a bad day, a bad outing anyway, and I'm already, known with this period poverty, so I'm not going again.
Period poverty.
That's what it is. Yes. It is period poverty. That's what it's known as. So how do we pull you men in beyond what you're doing in private spaces? I mean, can't we have a voice, amongst men as well, who will say, look, if we menstruated, we'll be talking about it like we talk about the leagues.
I like the subject already, which is why when I got the invite, I said, hey, this needs to go out. Many times we don't think outside of our immediate space. We just sort ourselves out and move on. And unfortunately, it seems prevalent, especially in a country like Nigeria, to just sort yourself out. Let's be frank about everything. People just sort themselves out and move on. The road is bad. Can the lane to my house be fixed? And once it's fixed, most people are fine. And that's what has transcended, or has permeated into other facets of life, including this. There are many voices or many, I don't want to say media, but many opportunities to communicate these things and make it a regular thing. There was a movement in Nigeria that led to something in 2020, without specifically pointing out those things. It happened in a certain way because voices became loud. Once the voice becomes loud, you can begin to make it something attractive to the men folk. Not attractive like, oh, I want to talk about menstruation and it's fun. If people find value in something. So for instance, picture, I didn't want to say Shaliwa, but I will now.
The popular Shaliwa. Okay, let me pull you into what Shaliwa is. Each time Kuro writes a scenario to promote his training courses and programs, there's always a Shaliwa did this. You too can be a Shaliwa. So I fell in love with Shaliwa. Here he comes again with Shaliwa. What has Shaliwa done now? Shaliwa is menstruating.
Shaliwa is lucky enough to have everything she needs for that experience to be great. But guess what? Shaliwa is in a school that is a middle class, everybody comes to school kind of school. Some friends are dropping off for that reason. Some friends are not coming back for the reason. The person who teaches her math the most in class is affected by it. She goes to her home, finds out that's the issue. Then she has two options. I steal from my parents to help my friend get what she needs, or I get my parents to give me money to help her get what she needs, or I get my parents to go and do right by the school. build the toilets, make sanitary towels available, have in the dispensary or in the sick bay or in the clinic, whatever they have in the school, a place full of them. So if anybody has an incident, they can run straight there, clean up, get a free one, and move on. Stuff like that. That would be something in science. I noticed there will be an electron and then nucleus around it. There'll be one start. Shalewa could be so this is me just saying this off the cuff. Picture that being a story. Picture skits about Nigeria or in Nigeria. Not talking only about funny stuff that people, including politicians, say, or what happened in the World Cup, but something that means something to us. That's why I like that as an avenue to consider.
Yeah, I was just going to say you're the second person saying this in just 1 week to me. The fact that our skit makers should rise up, they should
tell our stories.
yes, because they're storytellers. They should tell our stories within the purview of comedy and skits.
Yes.
So that you laugh, you smile, you leave comments
You click,
and
you like,
emoticons, but you
walk
also
away.
get the value, the message that they're pointing. It can't be all just smiles and about, laughing about politicians and the rest of them. There are issues we're dealing with. So it's about time they started looking at the psychological, socio-economic, socio-historical issues that we need to deal with as a people in order to pass the message along the lines of comedy.
Sure.
Right. So thank you for coming. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll be asking Kuro his period story. Welcome back. You're on to My Period Stories, a video podcast series looking at menstrual health, menstrual hygiene, and issues relating to menstruation, not just in Nigeria, but across the world. I'm holding a pack of reusable pads. The narrative now in Nigeria is that the price of sanitary pads has, gone up like every other item in the market. Not many people can afford a menstrual pad. Not many homes can deal with the increase in budget for menstrual pads. So there are manufacturers of reusable pads, and this is one of them. They're supporting My Period Stories. And this reusable pads has 4 items inside it, 4 pads inside it, reusable, as it says. And it means that at the minimum, you can use this for a year. So this issue of affordability of menstrual pads is also one of the issues women are grappling with, Kuro. So you find that because it's perpetually out of the reach of girls and women, they cut corners. They're using socks, they're using foams, they're using wrappers. Some even use leaves in some places. I don't know how that works, but it is documented. If you Googled, you find all of the sort of materials you find people using. So I have this reusable pads for you, Kuro. I know that you're not menstruating, but you have people who are menstruating. I know that this would be a great gift for someone around you who will find this really valuable and usable. So I'm going to give you this, but before I do that, I want to hear your period stories. There has to be a period story that stands out for you, in relating with the women in your life, whether in the workplace. I know you've talked about Shalewa. Shalewa is a fictitious human being. We both know that. But whether your mom, your wife, your daughter, your sister, someone in the workplace, an experience on a bus, there are different spaces where you find women menstruating and stories around
that.
Yes. So what would be the one that sticks out to you right now, that jumps at you at this moment?
Okay, first off, I think I got lucky with my sisters, my mom, my wife, my daughter. I realized that they were very conscious early enough. So there were very little incidents, if you know what I mean, outside the house, or even in the house. That's the truth. But I remember I went to a unity school when unity schools were really unity schools in my set in Federal Government College, Kano. They were
That would
about.
be when in the late
I'm
80s or
trying to
90s. You
pretend.
don't.
I don't want to sound very old.
I knew it. You were trying to let us think that you're not as old as you
Right.
think you are.
Exactly. But yes, I left secondary school in 1993.
Right.
But I went to Federal Government College in Kano, and there were about 10 students from every state. So I had to learn to live with other people. I think that's where I had one that jumped at me. I knew what menstruation was, but never really had any experience with it. But one day in class, a girl had a spill. She stood up, and I think that's why I remember the stand up, sit back down thing. So she stood up, and someone said, "Oh, she's injured," because the guy who said so didn't know. He just saw blood, and then she sat back down. And then the other girls rallied around her, cleaned the place, got her to the hostel, got her cleaned up, and the rest. So we talked about it for a few minutes in class before we moved on. I was happy that it left no stigma on her, because, and it was one thing that prevented that. The other girls, knowing what it was, stood up immediately, covered her, cleaned the place up, took her away, and came back with her to the class. And one of them asked, "Do you have any questions?" Like, just saying it jokingly.
They
The
put
guys,
they took charge of the situation. They
immediately.
owned the
I'm
moment,
telling you.
and then they were the ones coming at you. That do you
Do you
have
have
any question?
Do you need clarity on anything?
Right.
And when we all said, no, we understand what happened. Questions were asked when they had left. So somebody had asked what happened. And so, how can you not know? And then they explained this what happened. Oh, okay, all right. Oh, that's fine. Oh, menstruation is actually the beginning of the life cycle, so we should pay more attention to it. If whatever triggers menstruation didn't happen, probably I won't be here. There was no release of an egg. We didn't go that far, but they said something like that. So the girls came back. They all sat down. Luckily, there was no teacher in class at the time. And we just had to gist with her like nothing happened.
Oh, what a
And I think it helped a
moment.
lot. Many times, it's support that is part of the challenge. Is when it happens,
Psychosocial support.
support around yes. So I think if there's more awareness first, supporting people like that would be easier. Like has happened with many other things in the world today. Poverty to start with, disease. Cancer was like, oh, you're dead before. It's not only technology that got the perception to change, it included people talking about it, understanding what it meant. So I think that's my own menstruation story. It was a pleasant one.
Feels good.
Yes, and it was
Feels good to hear that that's my own menstruation
that's my
story.
own
So
menstruation story.
men also have menstruation stories, and that's the essence, part of the essence of this podcast. That we all have our period stories: man, woman, men, women, girls, boys, and we look forward to bringing boys on this podcast to come talk about their period stories. I must thank you very much, Kuro, for coming and bringing Shaliwa with you. So this is for a precious female in your space. So this is from us to you.
Thank
This
you
is
very
by
much.
Virtuous Pads. Right, would you have something to say about affordability? We're gaining traction now.
Yes, we are.
Traction.
Many times, people think the most important things in life have to be expensive. They don't. Sometimes they just have to be available when needed, and they make a world of difference. So here are my thoughts. First, the technology to create pads that are reusable is fantastic. I remember as a kid, we were brought up with napkins, not diapers.
That's right.
Great. So this makes tons of sense. I like the comment that it's possible to use this for a year, which means if you find one girl and hand this to her, this will make a world of difference. Here's my thought. Through what you are doing, let us men become more of a part of this, not just because there's a brand, but because somebody will be better off for it. And whether we like it or not, some people's dreams get cut short. Some people's plans get truncated. Some people get humiliated for something that they have no hand in. It's no fault of theirs, and life just changes. And when you empower one girl, usually an entire community benefits from it. So in my part is short, so to speak. Thank you very much. I don't know why you came up with this, but here's my own, I don't know how, but you take me through it so we can have a steady sort of support towards getting more of this, get it into the hands of those who can't pay for it, and generally getting people to think better about menstruation.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we got the right guest here. My period stories. What if men menstruated? That's what we've been talking about today. And I'm really quite grateful to Kuro John Ngubor for making out time to be with us on the podcast today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
And that's it. My period story is about menstrual health, menstrual hygiene, tackling the issues surrounding period poverty and other issues surrounding menstruating for a girl or for a woman. I'm your host, Funke Treasure. Let's do this again.